Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhignaswarat Tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsuraya Tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha Dhamna swena sada nirastakohakam satyam param dhimahi Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amritadrava sanyutam Pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. So we now enter the 22nd chapter of the 9th Skandha of Bhagavatam. So we are in the middle of the dynasty of Puru, and this will lead to the Pandavas, and then we will also see the dynasty of Yadu, which leads to Bhagavan Krishna, with which 9th Skandha will end. So in this chapter, we see the continuation of the dynasty of Puru. We already saw the king called Bharmyashva, who had 5 sons called Panchalas. So it is said that in that lineage comes the king Drupada, and he had a son and a daughter. The son is Drishtadyumna, and the daughter is Draupadi. So she is the famous daughter who marries the Pandava. So she appears in the lineage of Panchala. Then Shuka Brahmarshi moves to Ajameda again, the forefather, and he had another wife called Riksha, and through her there was a son called Kuru. And this Kuru is a very famous king because he established Kurukshetra, the famous battlefield of Mahabharata is called Kurukshetra, that was established by this king Kuru. And not only that, it is only because of him that the clan was called Kauravas. So the Pandavas and Kauravas are known to have fought the Mahabharata war, but the truth is, even the Pandavas are actually Kauravas. Many people are not aware of it. The Pandavas are called as Pandavas because they are the 5 sons of Pandu, and to distinguish them from Duryodhana and the 100 brothers, they are called as Pandavas. But in reality, both the Pandavas and the 100 sons of Drtharashtra are all in the same clan of Kuru, and therefore they are all Kauravas. And that's why in Bhagavatam, in some places, even Parikshit is also addressed as Kaurava, because the entire clan is Kaurava, coming from this king Kuru. He's a very famous king. So in the lineage of Kuru, after many generations, it is said that 3 brothers appear, Devapi, Shantanu and Balika. So this is the famous king Shantanu, who is the forefather of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So Devapi was actually the first son, but he relinquished the throne. He retired to the forest, and therefore Shantanu became the king. And this Shantanu is a very valiant, powerful, famous king as well. And it is said that this Shantanu married Satyavati. So 2 marriages was done by Shantanu. First, he married the embodiment of Ganga, the female deity of Ganga, and thereby they gave birth to the son Bhishma. So the famous son Bhishma is born to Shantanu through Ganga. So it is said here, Sharascha Shantano Rasid Gangayam Bhishma Atmavan Sarva Dharma Vidam Shreshto Mahabhagavatah Kavihi. So Bhishma is a great warrior. We have seen him way back in the first Skandha on his deathbed, well after the Mahabharata war was over, and when he gave the most beautiful instructions to Yudhishthira and then addressed the greatest prayer to Krishna called Bhishma Stuti. So Bhishma is counted as one among the great Mahajans, the 12 Mahajans. He is a very wise, very devoted, very valiant, and very powerful son of Shantanu. And the story of Bhishma is very special in Mahabharata because Bhishma is the rightful heir to the throne of Shantanu, but the father Shantanu, he falls in love with Satyavati, a fisherwoman. And when he falls in love with Satyavati, it is said that Satyavati's father wanted to make sure that Satyavati's progeny becomes the king and not Bhishma, because he said if Satyavati is married to you but Bhishma is the king, then Satyavati will not get the right respect. So Bhishma therefore made an oath that not only will he not become a king, but he will take a vow of celibacy so that he'll have no sons, and therefore only the lineage of Shantanu through Satyavati will rule the kingdom. So this was the great sacrifice of Bhishma for the sake of his father, because his father really loved Bhishma and he wanted Bhishma to become the king. But Bhishma knew that his father wanted to marry Satyavati, and he realized that he could not marry Satyavati because of him, because Shantanu wanted Bhishma to become the king, and Satyavati's father did not want that, and therefore he didn't accept the marriage. So knowing all this, Bhishma makes a vow that I shall not become the king and I shall not have any sons. I shall take a vow of celibacy so that nobody will come even after me to claim the throne. And making this promise to Satyavati's father, he gets the hand of Satyavati for his father. That's the greatness of the qualities of one of the qualities of Bhishma. There are so many great qualities he exhibits throughout Mahabharata. So after this, Satyavati gets married to Bhishma's father Shantanu. And the interesting thing is, Satyavati, before she even met Shantanu, she had a son through the great Rishi Parashara, and that son is the great Vedavyasa. So it is said here, Yasyam Parasharat Sakshat Avatirno Hare Kalaha. So the great Rishi Parashara once met Satyavati in an island. Island is called Dvipa, and there they had physical union, and through that Satyavati conceived and gave birth to a child in that island, and that is why he is called Dvaipayana, and he is called Vyasa because he organized the Veda. So this son was born to Satyavati even before she got married through Parashara Rishi. And then after that only she got married. So this here Shuka Brahmarshi glorifies his own father, who is Vedavyasa. So this son of Satyavati, born through Parashara, is the father of Shuka, who is narrating this great Bhagavatam to us. So there is a beautiful verse describing the whole lineage of Vyasa, connecting to Parashara and Shuka, which glorifies him as well as gives the lineage. It says, Vyasam Vasishtanaptaram Shakte Pautram Akalmasham Parasharatmajam Vande Shukatatam Taponidim. So it says Vyasa is Parasharatmajam, that is son of Parashara, and Shukatata means father of Shuka, the great Shuka Brahman who is narrating Bhagavatam, who is also one of the 12 Mahajans. So he is the father of Shuka and the son of Parashara through Satyavati. And so Shuka Brahmarshi says, my father is the great Rishi Vyasa, who organized the Vedas and who also taught me this Mahabhagavatam. He says, Vedagupto Munihi Krishno Yato Aham Idam Adyagam Hitva Swasishyan Pailadin Bhagavan Badarayana. He is also called Badarayana, this Vyasa. So he says, he taught me this Mahabhagavatam. In addition to organizing all the Vedas, he of course wrote Mahabharata. He wrote many Puranas, and as his crown jewel, as his pinnacle, he composed this Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, which glorifies the highest path of pure devotion, love and surrender to Bhagavan through all the great avatars, Bhagavatas. And therefore this Bhagavatam was taught by Vyasa to Shuka. So he says here, Mahyam Putraya Shantaya Param Guhyam Idam Jagav. This great confidential supreme wisdom of Bhagavatam was taught to me by my father. So he received this wisdom directly as father to son from his father Vyasa to Shuka Brahmarshi, and he is now narrating it to Parikshit. So this is just mentioned by Shuka Brahmarshi in passing because Satyavati is connected to Vedavyasa, in that she is the mother of Vedavyasa, and therefore through Vyasa Bhagavatam came, and so Shuka Brahmarshi mentions it. Now going back to Satyavati, after she marries Shantanu, she has two sons who are called as Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. Chitrangada is killed in a battle, and Vichitravirya marries two women. Actually, there are three princesses of Kashi called Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. And in order for them to be married to Vichitravirya, Bhishma wages a battle and gets all the three princesses. Amba falls in love with Bhishma, though she wants to marry Bhishma. But Bhishma has taken a vow that he shall not marry, so Amba is very unhappy with Bhishma, so she goes and complains to his guru, who is Parashurama. So Parashurama, whom we already saw, the avatar of Bhagavan, the partial avatar, he is a great warrior, so he taught Bhishma the art of being a warrior, in all ways of being a warrior. And so Amba goes to Parashurama and complains to him that your disciple Bhishma has betrayed me. He brought me from Kashi and now he is not marrying me. So Parashurama challenges Bhishma. He says, you have to do it, and Bhishma refuses. So Parashurama challenges him to battle, and he is forced to fight his own guru because Bhishma has made a vow that he shall not marry for the sake of his father. So he cannot break his vow, and therefore he fights with Parashurama, and he fights so valiantly that Parashurama is not able to defeat him. So Parashurama, the great warrior and the fierce avatar who killed all the Kshatriyas who came in his way, he himself could not defeat Bhishma. Such was the valor of Bhishma, the prowess of Bhishma. So he blessed Bhishma and went away, while Amba nursed her grievance, and that later results in Bhishma's death in the Mahabharata war through Shikandi. But meanwhile, Ambika and Ambalika are married to Vichitravirya. But this Vichitravirya is sick all the time, and he finally, it is said that he died of tuberculosis or some kind of lung disease without having sons. So Satyavati, the mother, she said they have to have sons for the lineage to continue. So she calls her other son Vedavyasa. As we saw, Vyasa was born to her through Parashara. So she calls Vyasa and says, you can have children through these two women, Ambika and Ambalika. So this was done in many cases in the Kshatriya lineage. And therefore here also Vyasa was asked to have children through Ambika and Ambalika. And through Ambika he had Drtharashtra, and through Ambalika he had Pandu, and he also, Vyasa had through the maidservant of Ambika and Ambalika, through the maidservant he had Vidura. So the three brothers, Dhritarashtra, Pandu and Vidura, were born to Vyasa through Ambika, Ambalika and a maidservant respectively. That's why Vidura is insulted by Duryodhana as the son of maidservant, because he was in fact born to a maidservant. But as a matter of fact, Vidura was the wisest of the three and the greatest devotee of Krishna, and a very great jnani and bhakta, a Mahabhagavata, who was ignored by Duryodhana. Meanwhile, Dhritarashtra and Pandu were the two other sons, and Dhritarashtra had 100 sons, it is said. As well known, he married Gandhari. Gandhari was the princess of Gandhara, which is the present day Kandahar in Afghanistan. So that is the region from where Gandhari came. And they married and they had 100 sons, starting with Duryodhana, who are called the Kauravas. And Pandu married Kunti and Madri, and his sons are called Pandavas, who are also Kauravas, as already mentioned. So Pandu's first wife is Kunti, and she had a particular boon that she can invoke a mantra in order to conceive through any deity of her choice. And this came very handy because Pandu had a curse that he cannot engage in sexual union because he, by mistake, killed a sage, mistaking him for a deer due to sound made in the forest when he was engaged in union with his wife. So the story goes that there are weapons in those days which are even seen today as well, which can hit by sound. So without having vision, just by detecting sound, the weapon can hit. And one such weapon was used by Pandu, and he heard some sound in the forest. He thought it was a deer making the sound, and he killed it. But then it was not a deer, it was a sage and his wife being together. And therefore, before dying, the sage cursed that he shall also be unable to ever enjoy sexual union, and if he does, he will die. And therefore, Pandu couldn't, and Kunti, on the other hand, had this boon. So, through this boon, invoking this mantra, it is said that she conceived. First, she in fact conceives Karna before even she was married to Pandu. And this son Karna, she abandons him because she is afraid that he was born without even having a husband. And therefore, she puts him in a box and drops him in Ganga. And he is picked up by someone and raised. And then later, he becomes a friend of Duryodhana. And he actually becomes a warrior who fights against the Pandavas, his own brothers. Meanwhile, after getting married, she invokes the same mantra, and through the deity for Dharma, that is Yamaraj, she gives birth to Yudhishthira. Through the deity for wind, she gives birth to Bhima, and through the deity for or Indra, that is the lord of the heaven, she gives birth to Arjuna. And then she also gives the same mantra to her co-wife Madri, because Madri, she wants her co-wife also to have the blessing of having sons, because Pandu cannot have sons through her. So with her blessings, she gets the mantra, and she has two sons, Nakula and Sahadeva, through the two deities called Ashwini Kumaras. So thereby, 5 sons are born, who are the 5 Pandavas. So Shuka Brahmarshi says, there you are. These are the 5 uncles, that is your grandfather Arjuna and the grand uncles, that is. So all of them, they got married to Draupadi, and they also had many other sons. All the sons are listed. But eventually, it is said that everybody got killed in the battle. So meanwhile, Arjuna married Shubhadra, and Shubhadra is the sister of Krishna, and he marries Shubhadra, and through Shubhadra, he gives birth to the great Abhimanyu. And that Abhimanyu is also killed in the battle of Mahabharat. But before he is killed, he already had given the seed of Parikshit in the womb of Uttara. So Uttara was pregnant while he died, and Shuka Brahmarshi says that everybody except the 5 Pandavas and Parikshit in the womb of Uttara, everybody, all the clan of the Kurus, both on the Duryodhana side and on the Pandava side, everybody else was killed. So the only surviving successor was Parikshit. So here he says beautifully, glorifying both Abhimanyu and Parikshit, he says, Tavatataha Subhadrayam Abhimanyur Ajayata Sarva Atiratajid Veera Uttarayam Tato Bhavan. He says, your father is Abhimanyu, who was born of Subhadra, and he was a great warrior. In fact, Abhimanyu's death in Mahabharata is one of the most moving incidents, because he is a young warrior, so valiant, so brave, and he enters a particular formation which only Arjuna and he knows to enter, but Arjuna was taken away due to a different battle, and he enters, and after he enters, he doesn't know how to leave, but he enters with the expectation that everybody will enter following him, and then they will defeat the whole army there. But due to a trick, he alone enters, gets stuck in there. He fights so valiantly, he kills so many people, and yet he is a young boy, and they all surround him unfairly, and they take his life in the most unfair, gruesome way, which is one of the most moving incidents of Mahabharata. So Abhimanyu dies in this way most bravely and valiantly, and his wife Uttara was pregnant with Parikshit, and then Parikshit was, of course, saved by Krishna. So, as we saw this also in the first Skandha, Ashwathama wanted to kill Parikshit in the womb of Uttara, but Krishna, out of his grace, saved the little baby inside the womb, and thereby Parikshit was able to survive and become the king. So he says here, Parikshineshu Kurushu Draune Brahmastra Tejasa Twamcha Krishna Anubhavena Sajivo Mochito Antakat. So he launched the Brahmastra. This Drauna means son of Drona, that is Ashwathama. He launched the Brahmastra to kill you, Parikshit, but you were saved by Krishna, which of course Parikshit knows and is always devoted to Krishna because of this. So thereby, Shuka Brahmarshi nicely has narrated the entire lineage starting from Puru all the way to Parikshit himself through the great Pandavas, Abhimanyu, Parikshit. And then he in fact goes on to say, even listen after you what will happen, because he is what is called a Trikalangyani, Shuka Brahmarshi. He knows exactly what will come forth. So he says, your son is Janamejaya, and then he goes on to list his son and many generations after that for a long time, till when this lineage will continue to rule. And with this, 22nd chapter ends, and we enter the 23rd chapter, where Shuka Brahmarshi now goes back to the sons of Yayati. So we saw that Yayati had 5 sons, if we remember, and we took Puru, who was the last son, in fact, who became the king, and he explored the lineage of Puru to come all the way to Parikshit. So he, through Puru, we came to Shantanu, or before that we came to Kuru, and then Shantanu, and then through him Drtharashtra and Pandu, and finally Pandavas, and then Abhimanyu, Parikshit, and his lineage. So all of this came from Puru, the last son of Yayati. But Yayati had 4 more sons, Anu, Druhyu, Turvasu, and Yadu. Yadu is the other most famous son, because Yadu dynasty is where Sri Krishna appears. But before that, for completion's sake, Shuka Brahmarshi also lists the lineage of Anu, Druhyu, and Turvasu, their sons. There are in fact many personalities mentioned, but the only famous one there is a couple. One is the great Rishi Romapada. He appears in that clan, and his son-in-law is a Rishi called Rishi Shringa. And this Rishi Shringa, in fact, is the one who is very well known for doing great yajnas, great sacrifices. He is a very powerful Rishi. And Druhyu and Turvasu, their lineage is also given. And then finally, Shuka Brahmarshi now moves to Yadu dynasty. So Yadu dynasty is what we are waiting for, because Yadu dynasty is where Bhagavan Krishna appears, and this is what Parikshit has been waiting for. He is happy to know his lineage now. He has been told in detail his lineage starting from Puru and all the descendants, but what he is really waiting for is Yadu's dynasty and how Krishna appears, and starting from Krishna's birth and listening to all the glorious pastimes of Krishna. So now Shuka Brahmarshi mentions that I am going to give you the posterity of Yadu, and know that just listening to Yadu's dynasty is so glorious and so auspicious, because it is in this that the Almighty Lord, the Supreme Being, Paramatma, took a human form and appeared. He says, Varnayami Mahapunyam Sarva Papa Haram Dranam Yador Vamsham Narashutva Sarva Papai Pramuchyate. He says, I will describe to you the most auspicious dynasty of Yadu now, Yador Vamsham, which removes all sins just listening to this dynasty, because what it means is listening to the story of Krishna. So he's just giving a preview of what is about to come by saying, the fact that I'm starting to talk about Yadu means get ready, because we are going to go into the story of Krishna, which is the most auspicious. He says, Yatra Vatirno Bhagavan Paramatma Narakritihi, where Bhagavan Paramatma, the Supreme Self, Narakritihi means took a human form and appeared to perform his wonderful leelas. So please get ready and listen very attentively. Of course, Parikshit has already been listening very attentively. Now he is all the more so eager listening to these words of Shuka Brahmarshi. Now Shuka Brahmarshi continues the lineage of Yadu. he mentions that Yadu had 4 sons, and after mentioning the names of the 4 sons and their lineage, he says that in this lineage comes a king called Madhu, and his son is called Vrishni. And these are very important names because it's because of Yadu, Madhu, and Vrishni that the clan is called Yadavas or Madhavas or Vrishnis. So he says here, Madhava Vrishnayo Rajan Yadavas Cheti Samyitaha. So Krishna is called Yadava sometimes, Krishna is called Madhava, Krishna is called Vrishni, Krishna is called Varshneya. All these names come because of his forefathers, because Yadu is the main forefather, and coming from him, they are all called Yadavas. And specifically in that lineage comes Madhu, a king, and therefore he is called Madhava. And after Madhu comes Vrishni, and therefore he is called Vrishni or Varshneya. In fact, Bhishma, when he does his Bhishma Stuti before that, he addresses Krishna beautifully as Varshneya, means one who appears in the clan of Vrishni. So all these names are beautiful names because they are all associated with Krishna. So he just gives this preview of the kings Madhu and Vrishni and why Krishna is called therefore Yadava, Madhava and Vrishni or Varshneya. And then he lists many other sons who have appeared in this dynasty and who married and had progeny and so on. And with this, he ends this chapter giving a preview into the upcoming appearance of Krishna. And with this, this chapter ends. And the next chapter is the last chapter of the 9th Skandha, where the lineage will continue to bring forth up to the point of the birth of Bhagavan Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.